We're going to call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, conditional use permits, and appeals from the decision of the staff and the administration of the zoning ordinance, and to make decisions in such matters. This is an open and informal meeting. It's currently being recorded right now. The board members have received a copy of the agenda, staff report, and recommendations. Copies of the agenda, staff report, and recommendations are available to the public in the trays on my far left. We'll be having a 5-member board here today, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. In order for your appeal to pass, it has to have 4 votes. It's not just a plural vote. It has to have 4 out of the 5 votes. I'm going to introduce the members that are here right now. On my right, we have Cindy Smith. Next to her is Tom Clark Sr. On my left is Mel Pins. Next to him is Linda Westergaard. My name's Bill Gray. On my left is City Legal Michael Kelly. And representing city staff today, we have Eric Lundy, City Planner, Bert Drost, City Planner, and Sue Ann Donovan, the Zoning Enforcement Officer. And I think that's all that's here, isn't it? Okay. The board is required to base its decision in each case upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the applicant. The law applicable to each case is identified in the written staff report. If the facts as determined by the board demonstrate that the criteria established by law for granting the relief have been satisfied, then the board must grant the relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the relief. All speakers are requested to focus their comments upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law have been satisfied. Each appeal will be announced in order, and staff will present a brief explanation of the appeal. Any written comments received by the staff prior to the hearing will be distributed to the board or otherwise identified. All speakers are requested to speak from the podium over here on my right and to start their presentation by giving both their name and address. The applicant or representative of the applicant will be allowed to speak first and will be allowed 10 minutes to present their appeal. Anyone else present in support of the appeal will then be allowed 5 minutes each to present his or her comments. Anyone present in opposition to the appeal will then be allowed 5 minutes each to present his or her comments. The applicant will then be allowed 3 minutes for rebuttal or other closing comments. The meeting will then be closed to public comment and the board will make a decision. That decision and reason will be announced. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or a member of the board requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and separately considered under the public hearing agenda. The decisions of this board can only be appealed to the Polk County District Court. If you believe you have been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the District Court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the City Council to change those regulations. All material, written or otherwise, used today as part of any presentation will become a permanent part of the record and will not be returned. If you have cell phones on out there, we ask that you turn them off or at least put them on vibrate because they tend to be very disruptive to the process. With the short agenda we have today, I doubt if we'll need this, but I will make an announcement that if we need to, we'll be taking a short break around the 3 or 3:30 time frame. As I mentioned, we have a consent agenda, and Bert, you have one change on that. Would you like to?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Drost, planner for the City of Des Moines. Item number 2, we're going to move to the discussion portion of the agenda. There's just been some discussion with regards to how the garage should appear, so I'm not sure the applicant is totally on board with staff's recommendation, so I feel it would be best just to discuss it quickly. So.
Okay. So do we need to vote to move it?
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to move this to the public hearing agenda.
I'll move.
Second. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Motion carries 5-0, so item 2 is going on the public hearing agenda. And that leaves the following items on the consent agenda, and I'll read those off. Item 1 is an exception at 2720 41st Place. Item 3 is a variance at 928 6th Avenue. Item 4 is an exception at 2105 Ingersoll. Item 5 is an exception at 2521 East 38th Street. And item 6 is an exception at 2440 Dean Avenue. Is there anybody here that's here to speak against any of the items that I just read off? And the board members have any questions? I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the exceptions and variances requested on items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, subject to their compliance with the staff recommendations as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Been moved and second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So if you're here for items 1 through 6, with the exception of 2, they've been approved, and starting tomorrow, you can go get your permits. Thank you, Bert. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the public hearing agenda. Item 2 is an exception. It's 689 28th Street.
We want to jump to number 7 quick.
I suppose we could. We're going to do a quick change here. We're going to go back and hear number 2 in a second. There is a change in item 7. That's the conditional use permit at 500 East Locust Street at the Teach-Out Building. So, Bert, go ahead and tell us what's going on.
Item number 7 is the request at the Teach-Out Building. It's been before this board 2 other times. It's been continued to this meeting. At 11:11 this morning, I did receive this email from Peggy Rash withdrawing her application. However, it's our policy that in order to have a withdrawal be formal, we need their signature. I have not received Peggy's signature yet, so as far as staff goes, it's close to being withdrawn, but not formally withdrawn yet. So I guess at this point, the board could either open the hearing and make a decision. Again, staff's recommendation is for denial on that, or the board could continue it a month, and with the intent that in that next month they would be submitting a signature for their withdrawal, or the third option for the board would be to go ahead and dismiss the appeal and just use this email in this instance as the formal withdrawal. So.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Is there anybody that's here to speak against item 7? Would you like to speak? And we'll hear what you've got to say before we determine what we're going to do.
I'm Marcia Steele. I have a business at 520 East Grand Avenue. I live at 1427 Thompson Avenue. I spoke at the July meeting. Of the 3 options that Bert just outlined, I would hope that you would hear it and follow staff recommendations to deny, and then zoning enforcement or someone can then monitor the property for probably the continued use of serving of alcohol, which has occurred since this board said it should not, no illegal activity as of the end of July. It has continued.
Did you see the staff report where they didn't find any of that happening?
Well, I'll let Julia to speak to that since she offices in the building. But that would be my request. Don't go outside the boundaries of dismissing without your required signature, and don't continue it for another month. Please act on it today and kill it dead.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Julia Tellerico. I manage Velvet Coat, which is on the first floor of the Teach-Out Building, 500 East Locust. I can tell you that there's, been alcohol use up there, and I've seen them taking it in, and, they have these first Friday evening events, and I've seen her taking her wine up there, on a cart and everything. So I know that it has continued.
Would you identify who you mean by her?
Peggy Rash.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, and I know that it's gone on. And having any more liquor license down on that block is just, I can tell you for a fact, just in the last 8 weeks, the front glass of the Teach-Out Building, a door similar to this, was cracked and broken and had to be replaced. And then just 2 weekends ago, the same door set on the front of the teach-out building, the glass was completely shattered, as well as the glass in the Woolies building at 504, which are both Kirk Blanc's buildings. You know, and it's related to whatever, drunk people carousing, whatever. I mean, it is definitely, there's glass all over the street on Sunday morning 2 weekends ago. One of my customers said, she moved out, actually. She moved to Sherman Hills last weekend because she said, I cannot take living down here anymore and all the commotion that goes on late at night. So, I mean, it is a mixed-use neighborhood, you know. There are a lot of residents down there and a lot of bars, a lot of businesses, and so, I don't know. I just don't think we need any more alcohol specifically in my building, so thanks for your time.
Any questions? Thank you. Yeah, come on. Sue Ann, why are we getting conflicting reports here of whether there's alcohol use going on right now?
The staff report the inspection that was done was just related to making sure the building meets the fire code. And we checked the police records. There was no police reports of them serving alcohol illegally. So that's not to say they haven't been doing it.
Okay.
It's just they haven't notified the police.
You didn't get invited to the party, apparently.
So no matter what action we do here, if they don't get permit to go ahead, will this become an enforcement issue?
Chair Board, Sue Ann Donovan, yes, it would become an enforcement issue. So we could follow up because they don't have the correct liquor license to be serving it.
But in order to do that, you'd need another complaint to come in or some incident to happen where someone reports, hey, they're still dragging
Yeah.
booze upstairs or
Yeah.
serving booze
I
somehow.
I think what they're doing, from what I'm hearing, and I can follow through after this better than I could before because it was kind of in limbo,
Sure.
is that they're advertising wine tastings.
Okay,
The advertisement of the wine tasting would probably be enough for me to
okay.
start, or I could go visit, I suppose, but.
Now, in your discussions with them on this, has it kind of been made clear that wine tastings are not allowable?
I think they'd
Get the hint?
get the hint,
Okay,
yes.
all right,
But we may have to be a little
Sure.
stronger in our hint, so.
okay.
Okay. We have any last questions for staff before we figure out how we want to handle this?
Only question, I do have one for Bert.
Okay.
Bert, the email that you received from Peggy, has this been the email address she had previously used, to your knowledge?
Yeah, and I've
Did
gotten
you-
emails from her from this address before.
Okay, okay.
And she references the Kirk Blanc, who is the property owner. He did email yesterday, and I put that in front of all your seats. So he clearly is against the proposed use. So
Okay.
even if it was approved today, Kirk Blanc would have as the property owner, the right to evict that business anyway. So
Okay,
if he truly is against the sale of wine there, he would
okay.
have that right.
And that's legal standing he has outside of our venue here?
Right.
Okay.
One other question. You put in an order that if we were going to proceed to approve this request, that Peggy Rash, Todd Van Stein, Kirk Blanc, Sam Erickson, and Julie Tallarico should attend the meeting.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Todd, Kirk, and Peggy probably thought this withdrawal meant it was withdrawn and they didn't have to be here. I know Sam, I had got an email and a letter from her saying she had to be out of the country. I think that letter's in front of all of you as well, so.
Mr., what's his name? Blanc wrote in an email on the 25th of September that he doesn't support this. He hasn't supported it. He's told you twice he didn't support it. So do we have any reason to believe?
No, and I met with him yesterday and he told me face to face he didn't support it, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thanks, Bert. We'll close the public portion, go to a board decision here.
Well, I guess my first question, Mr. Chairman, is do you want to hear any further presentation by staff on this, in this matter? Or are you willing to rely on the written record?
I think we're willing to rely on the written record here. We've heard this before, and this is the third go-around on this.
Well, I think it's important then that we just go forward and hear the matter and support staff recommendation. I cannot understand why we would continue it again. This has been kicking around since
Yes.
July.
I agree.
And it's not fair to have people keep coming down.
They're not getting paid to appear.
That's right.
Can we simply just make the motion to move staff recommendations?
We can.
Then I would make that
We'd,
motion.
we'd need to give an opportunity for anybody to speak on behalf of the applicant or anybody in favor of it, wouldn't we?
In all fairness, that's true, because there are a lot of,
Because all we did was have staff present their front.
I asked if
right?
there was
We asked.
anybody
Oh,
here.
and you asked, okay, okay.
Well, we'll give one more shot. Is there any, 'cause there might be somebody here to speak in support. I doubt it, but was there anybody here to
Fair.
speak in support on item 7? I'm not seeing
Okay.
too many people, but we got to make it official, so, okay. So, Linda, you
I
made
would
the
make the
motion.
motion to move staff recommendations to deny.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, so it's denied. Okay, we're going back to the regular agenda items. Item 2. This is an exception at 689 28th Street.
Mayor, members of the board, item number 2 is for the property at 689 28th Street. They're proposing to construct a 20... Oh, yes. Just take a step back. Since there's only 5 members here, I didn't know if you wanted to offer continuances to anybody. I know we're going to have one request on item 11 or 12.
You did explain the 4-1
Yeah.
thing already.
Yeah,
So I know
but, okay, that's probably not a bad idea, Bert. Picking up a little bit on what we had talked about right at the start, is that you need 4 votes to pass. So if you feel that your item might be close, and you might stand a better chance, if 7 members are here, you're more than willing to come up and request a continuance. However, there's no guarantee that we'll have a full 7-member board next month or the month after. We try to have everybody here, but if you're comfortable with having your item heard today, just remember, you got to have 4 votes. So is there anybody that would like to at least request a continuance, sir? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Olson. I'm an architect and real estate appraiser here in town. I'm here on behalf of David Walker, British Motors, item number
I need
12.
your address, too.
It's 4024 Grand Avenue, number 100, Des Moines 50312.
And you're here to speak on item
12. I believe it
12.
is.
Okay. So I take it you're here to request a continuance?
Yeah, yes, it'd be nice if we could have another member or two here to.
Okay. What's the next meeting, Bert? October?
I want to say October 23.
Unless you change me.
It's the 4th Wednesday in October.
Why, thank you, Bert. It's October 24th.
October 24th. Okay. Before we go, is there anybody here that was here to speak in opposition to item 12? Okay. So right now you're requesting a continuance, okay? Accept any thoughts on that? Do we want to? Okay.
I think that, I'd move for a continuance.
Okay.
We have the consent of the applicant, and there's no one here to object.
Object. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
You too, Mel?
Yes, sorry.
Motion carries. That could have been 4-1, 5-0. So we'll see you next month then.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
I should have voted no just to show how the procedure works, right?
That'd have been great. All right. Thank you, Bert. So now let's, back to item 2.
What's this?
Mr. Chair, there might be others that want to come up in front of you.
Oh,
On which item?
Any-
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Is there anybody else that would like to request a continuance?
Maybe you need to explain it. We had some latecomers.
Thanks, Eric. Never hurts to
I
check.
just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
I know there was other ones we were recommending.
All right, now we safe to go to number 2?
That was safe to move. Number 2 is a request to build a 24 by 30-foot garage in the rear yard of the property at the southeast corner of 28th Street and Pleasant Street. It's just across 28th Street from the Ruby Van Meter School and Smouse School, and then the Scottish Rite Senior Housing is just to the south here. Here's a closer aerial of what they're proposing. They're proposing to have a 24-foot wide by 30-foot deep garage in the rear yard. It would be accessed by the existing driveway from Pleasant Street. There is 20 feet of right-of-way between the property line and the curb. So with this 4-foot setback, it would be 24 feet back from the street curb. In talking with the neighborhood, their hope is that someday a sidewalk will be constructed along Pleasant Street. So even with this garage, there is still plenty of room to put a sidewalk in there at some point. Here's a picture of the garage that they would like to build. Here's a picture of the house. And then this is the existing drive approach. The garage would be right at the end of this pavement. So remember, there's 20 feet from the curb to your actual property line. So then the garage would be 4 feet past that.
Could you show us the house again and where this is in relation to the house?
Yeah. And here's the house.
Okay, it's where the little car is. They're going to put a garage over there. That's what they want.
Yeah, the house faces 28th Street.
All right.
We didn't get any comment cards back. We did get a letter or an email from the neighborhood association that I put in front of you. This property is within the Woodland Heights neighborhood. Back in the 1990s, the city did a neighborhood plan for the Woodland Heights neighborhood, and one of the outcomes of that plan was that architectural guidelines be created that kind of guides new construction within the neighborhood. And really, the only time these guidelines are enforced is when there's public subsidy or public money or public incentives for development. Then we hold them to these standards. But in the instance of this garage, we did feel it is appropriate to require some level of compliance with these design guidelines. The design guidelines really just deal with the massing and making sure the garage is going to match the house and the surrounding properties. As you saw from that picture of the house does have a hip roof. So if you went strictly by these design guidelines, you should require the garage to have a hip roof as well. We haven't put that into a recommendation. We understand that doing a hip roof would add substantially to the cost compared to the gabled roof that they're proposing. But we do feel that there are a few other small modifications they could make to the garage that would just make it be a little bit more architecturally compatible with the property. So these are the conditions we've recommended. I won't go through them all. I know the two that the applicant would disagree with are 3, that they have to have 4-inch trim around the window and door openings, and then 6, that we feel that they should either have 2 single-car overhead garage doors or put windows in the double garage door that they're proposing again. This was the elevation they proposed, so we said either do 2 one-car overhead doors or do this double but with windows across. So we thought that would make it a little more compatible.
And when you say windows, Bert, you just mean kind of those little decorative windows, maybe 9 inches tall, or in one panel across?
Within one panel across.
Okay.
So, were there any questions?
Nope. Thanks, Bert. Applicant or representative of the applicant?
Neil Brankus, 1451 Northeast 69th Place. I'm with Midwest Builders, and I've received a copy of staff's recommendations, and that's not a problem at all.
Oh,
Good.
just that quick. Like to hear that. Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else here to speak in support? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Any last questions for staff? Yes.
Just a quick clarification. The folks at Woodland Heights, I appreciate their concern with this. However, they say they're really concerned. They don't want the garage to be located within 20 feet of the street curb of Pleasant Street. And even with the variance requested, we won't be within 20 feet of the curb, correct? That, a lot of times I think when people think of setbacks, they think of setbacks from the curb, not from the edge of the right-of-way. So I appreciate the Woodland Heights folks' concern, but I think this will fit in and be set back enough for future sidewalks and visibility.
Well, it's big enough, you're going to be able to keep cars in the garage instead of on the street. Those are the kind of things.
Adds property value, neighborhood character, et cetera.
There we go.
So-
We're all on the right plan there.
Yep.
Okay, no other questions for staff. Close the public portion, go to board decision.
I'd move approval of the requested exemptions, subject to staff recommendations 1 through 9 as presented.
I got a second. Thank you. The moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Motion carries 5-0. Just like that, you're done. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 8. This is an exception and variance at 2325 Carpenter.
I might have to have you zoom in. Can you lighten the fires a little bit too? The property we're discussing here is at the northeast corner of Carpenter and 24th Street, kind of at the east edge of the Great Campus. This is Old Main right here, if you're familiar with Drake. The parking lot for the NAP Center. I believe this is their IT building here. And then this is the little police substation that's in the old Drake's security, I think, used to be in there. Or no, I'm sorry, that was the post office. Drake security was over here. The property was vacant and has lost its non-conforming rights. As you can see, it was originally built as a single-family dwelling many, many years ago, and had been converted. And there was a period of time when it had certificates for 5 units within the building. It's been vacant now. Given the size of the property, it could have a single-family dwelling. It could, with an exception of the lot width, have a 2-family dwelling. What they're requesting with this relief is a variance of the lot area and a significant variances of setbacks to allow 2 units to go into this building, which is the original single-family house. And then they also want to put 2 units into the carriage house structure, which is at the east rear of the property. And that's what's driving the other 2 variances. That a second duplex is allowed in this zoning district, which is R3. That constitutes what's considered an other use and drives a lot area of 10,000 minimum. So there is the relief of that. There's also the relief, then it has to meet setbacks from the rear yard, which would be 35. Well, they're not meeting that. They have about a 4-foot rear yard, and we believe there's probably 0 foot side yard to the north. The applicant did provide a sketch which indicated a 4-foot. I guess that's in question, so we noticed it for a 0 based on that. Because what we do know is that I believe the property is 38 feet in width, and the dimensions just don't add up if that is actually 4 feet. So based on what we know about the size of the garage in the house. And I wanted to verify that lot width for you. Let's see. Better drawing. I'm sorry, it's 53.2.
Eric, there, on this sketch that was produced by the applicant,
Yes.
there appears to be a sidewalk between the properties?
I think they're just pointing to that as something they might do then to.
Well, there is no
accommodate
sidewalk there.
Here's my question,
Just
Eric.
shows you the area you're talking about. I think they're just showing that they would have a pedestrian link here.
Okay.
That's just a proposal
Uh,
to show what they would want to do.
Would you show the picture of the carriage house again? Because that carriage house looks newer to me. And when I pulled it up on county records, it looks like these folks bought it in April, but I see a permit to tear down a garage.
Yeah, there was a
Was-
demo permit because at one time they were proposing to remove it.
But it's never been removed?
No.
That's
There,
the
that
same
picture
one?
was, I took that picture, so. But it is an older, it may not be as old as the house, but it's certainly older in its construction and its, the era of it is, with the sliding doors and so forth. It's pre-war probably.
How could that be converted into a duplex?
They would have to do it through our building codes. I mean, I don't know if we've got any specific information as to how they want to do that. Maybe the applicant can speak to that. But, I guess I would question how small those units would be compared to what the units would be in the house.
And what do you consider a family unit? Two
Four
family
unrelated.
units?
4 unrelated.
Four
A two-family
unrelated?
dwelling would be 2 separate units within a building. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know that before, when carriage houses have come before us, or even when people have wanted to build garages, we have always put in the wording that it specifically cannot be used for living
Habitable.
quarters. And I just wondered if there was anything attached
I think it's their
to
definite
this.
intention. And I spoke with the appellant, and their indication is that, a certain number of units are necessary to drive what this project is going to cost in terms of renovating. And that was just stated. I never got any evidence to that effect, but I did tell them they would have the opportunity to present evidence of that nature to the board.
Okay.
And if you look at our staff report, we didn't, since that wasn't directly provided to us and we weren't satisfied with the argument that there's a hardship here. We're comfortable with going with a duplex on the main building.
Right.
And getting relief that necessary to allow that. The zoning is R3. If you look on the block, there's numerous examples of 2 and 3 unit conversions. There's a few that are bigger than that, and then of course there's some built apartments at the north end of the block towards Forest.
Can you show us that on the overhead?
Yeah, I'm not sure the aerial goes too far north, but
It's just,
if you look at some of these, this is obviously built for a bigger number of units.
Okay.
But you'd be surprised, there's a couple of these in here that have 6 and 7 units. So they're really divided up into very small apartment units. That's not something that staff believes is in furtherance of the long-range plan. Some of those are much higher density than they would be allowed under the zoning currently. Many of them were done at times when there wasn't a direct relationship between our building code or rental code division and our zoning to ensure that densities and things were met when they did these conversions. So, we've moved forward from a certain point saying, we're going to enforce those densities now before rental certificates get issued. But, many of these have long histories of rental certificates for a number of units that are much higher than the density that would be allowed. So the character does have a little more density than what the long-range plan is trying to achieve. So we also have a concern about that many units from a character perspective too.
it's also, to me, it's an awfully small piece of land. And you
Yeah,
only
it-
got
that's-
64, I mean, even the other lots are bigger, but,
Smallest lots are right there. I mean, if you look at the block, this one would have been a typical size had it had the other portion to the east, which also has a house on it. And then these here are smaller because of the way they face Carpenter. So
Okay.
when these were kind of divided off to
And
face
are those
Carpenter,
apartments?
those were smaller lots on the block. There's a few instances where you can see a couple were combined, but for the most part, you know, they're this a little bit larger home lots. These are larger dwellings that were converted. It was the tendency to do that probably in the 50s and the 60s as veterans were looking for housing. If you look at the history of this area, that's when a lot of it was converted. But staff, basically staff is of the opinion that A, it's not in character to go with the 4 units, and B, we didn't see a compelling argument that it met the test for variances, but we can support an exception for the lot width to allow that main structure to become a duplex or two-family unit.
Well, let me ask you this. As you look at this and you look at the main dwelling and then this carriage house, where is the play yard for the 2 families that are going to be in the main house?
There's not, most of the yard would be to the corner. So if you look at this,
To the corner?
you know, to the corner of the intersection. So, I mean, most of your,
In the front yard of the
yeah,
house?
most of your open area is going to be out to this portion of the lot.
Do you have a picture of that, the front of the house? Okay.
And again, so from a character perspective, it's pretty dense on a little piece of land.
How many square feet are in the house? 4,000?
Not even that, I don't think.
Oh, it's 2 floors. And a 3rd floor, actually.
here it says,
2953 is the gross building area.
Not including the basement.
Correct.
Yeah, 0 for finished basement,
And
so.
and not including the 3rd floor?
Basement is unfinished is 1,158, but the remainder is, there's no indication if it's not counting the 3rd floor. It
Yeah.
indicates that it is 3 stories.
if you add up 1158 and 1158 and 637, I think you'd come to 2953.
Yeah, okay.
So that's.
Thank you.
Was there a consent map on this, Eric?
Yes. It was
Blank?
apathy, yeah.
And Eric, just for my clarification and simple math here, they're proposing 4 dwelling units in total between 2 structures, right?
Correct. And
Okay.
it had been 5 at one time, but we
Right.
don't give it any rights to that at
Right.
this point.
But this application says up to 4 dwelling units. And how many people can live in each dwelling unit?
Conceivably 4 unrelated,
All right, so up to.
or more in a family unit. So, I mean,
Right.
it's difficult to say if they were all family units. that
Right,
were
so
all
I'm
related by
guessing,
blood.
since we're near a college here, if we had 4 units, we could have up to 16 non-related people
Yes.
living on this premise, and you've got parking spaces proposed for 4 people,
Correct.
for 4 cars.
Which does meet it based on, number of parking spaces really actually is not the
Drive.
item
Right,
that's
right.
being
Okay, but
built.
I'm just trying to add up what's going on here. So, we could have up to 16 people, we'd have space for 4 cars. Even if we had families, though, we could have more people. Theoretically.
Yeah. If you had a
Theoretically.
family of 12 that were all related by blood.
Okay, and there's no minimum square foot requirement per dwelling unit, or would they meet that?
There would be on a rental, yes. So, you know,
As
the bedroom
proposed,
size.
would they
The
meet
bedroom
that?
size will drive the number of people. I couldn't tell you what that would be because I don't know
Okay.
the bedroom sizes. So
Right.
if you're going to rent these out.
Even as non-related people, the
Right.
size of these
They could be
individual.
overcrowded, yes.
All right, so the size of these individual units may then put a cap on how many people could live in them.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
And there's
thank you.
different rules, like a child and a parent can,
Mel,
It is different
not a
than two,
realistic
yeah.
cap, okay?
Yeah.
Because
Gotcha.
they put 2 people in a 100-square-foot bedroom.
Yes.
And then the
10 by 10.
the next bedroom size down can be 75 square feet.
Okay,
Okay, so.
all right. Cool.
Any other questions for staff? Thanks, Eric. Applicant or representative of the applicant?
If you want to use any of those.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. I'm Trevor Williams. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Des Moines Building and Land, and we are the company that owns the property at 2325 Carpenter.
I need your address, too.
My address, personal address, is 2128 University, Des Moines 50311.
Thank you.
Would you like me to start addressing the individual issues? or-
Whichever you're comfortable with. If you feel just addressing the issues is.
Sure.
Okay.
The first one was the last one you did with
Sure.
the bedrooms.
Okay.
So the 3 of the 4 units are around 600 square feet per unit.
Okay.
So the 2 in the carriage house, the up-down units are roughly 600 square feet, and then the 3rd floor is also 600 square feet. So these are single-bedroom properties. In the city of Des Moines, you have to have 80 square feet was the minimum that would require for a bedroom, and it also has to have a closet. There's no minimum requirement on the size of the closet. So I believe also by state law, you can have up to 3 people you can have up to 2 people in 80 square feet. That's it. We have a company policy within our corporation that allows only 2 people, period, to be on a lease with a single bedroom. So that would be, could be 2 parents, 2 couples, 2 friends. And then outside of that, then we would adhere to that, the city rule if you had children. So then in that case, then you'd have your 2 parents and then a child, and that would be it. So that's an internal policy that we use to help fight too much density in such a small area of 600 square feet. So that would be
Okay.
the explanation we have on that.
That helps. Thank you.
Let's see, the next one was,
Before you go on, I want
Sure.
to take a little bit more time.
Sure.
You're talking about family. Now, with this being right on top of Drake, I think, what's your target market? It's
It's students,
There we
certainly
go.
students.
Okay.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep, and so from our standpoint, to take the house as it is today, which is in incredibly rough condition, to say the least, and deconstruct it and put it back from 5 units, which it is what it is today, to 2 units, our scope of work that we've developed it won't pay for itself with student rent. With the amount of rent that's being garnered in the neighborhood from the students, it will not support a renovation of that scale just with the 2 units in the house. So that's when we looked to the carriage house and realized we have 600 plus square feet on the 1st floor and 600 square feet on the 2nd floor. We realized that was an opportunity to help offset the cost of the historic restoration on the large property. And so that's the road we went down. As you mentioned, there was a permit pulled to demo the garage, but when we realized the cost involved on just the house, we knew we had to have some way to offset that. The neighborhood rent is just not high enough to allow us to do just one build on the big house. We had to look to that other property. And it is, in our company's opinion, within 10 years of the build of the house. The construction of it, the nails that have been used, the detail work is, I would say, for all intents and purposes, almost identical to the house itself. So we believe it is absolutely a historic property. It had water, it had heat, and it has electricity, all still to that carriage house. It has absolutely been a illegal maybe, living space at one time in its past. We have no doubt about that in our company's opinion. We've had both our electrician and the plumber come, and they have verified those things for us, that it was some kind of a living space at some point. So again, that helped us out.
So does this mean like there's toilets and running water in the carriage house, or you're saying there was?
There was. They have been disconnected because we assume at some point in the past, a rental inspector said, look, guys, this isn't up to code anymore. You're going to have to cut it off in the basement. So they've cut, because it's a hot water boiler. So they had the boiler lines running out. So they cut all that. They removed the toilets, removed the sinks, removed the radiators, capped everything in the basement. So, and there is a drain, still 3-inch tile drain that does run into the house that actually still is, would still be up to code today to tie on outside the house to tile. So.
Now, it's a shared tile and shared water with the house?
With the house, that's correct. And obviously, in this situation, have to meet modern codes, all those things would have to be split properly. The electric, same way. They would be individually conditioned. The air would be conditioned individually in each unit, just like in the house would be. So all those things would be of modern standard. But looking back to the past, we can see what was there. That gives us an idea where we can go with it.
But those are the only issues you wanted to address?
Yeah, basically
If you'd like, you can start at the beginning and give us a presentation of why this is a really great idea.
Right. I wanted to make sure we address those other issues first, but again, the house was, when it was built, very prominent. I'm sure whoever built the house had quite a bit of money. They put it on a corner, which, oftentimes was a sign of their wealth and their standing in the community. Inside the house, it's important to note, both in the carriage house and in the house, part of the driving force for us and with what we do is the historical nature of what is still there. So trim work, doors, fixtures, those things are still there. And our corporation specializes in the conversion of houses that have been cut up, historical houses, and bring them back historically accurate to a single family or duplexes. In keeping with the historical context. When we bought this property, it had those things. It had the trim, it had the pocket doors. It's all still in there. It's unpainted. It's got a beautifully tiled original fireplace still intact, which is with an original coal insert. So those are some of the driving forces behind when we went to do this, why we thought it was a very good idea. Secondarily, besides the historic nature of the property, we specifically work in the Drake neighborhood. The three of us, that's what we do. Every day, we work in the field doing this exact thing to other properties. And so a property of this size, of this historical magnitude, in our opinion, needed to be rehabbed in a way that it was going to be sensitive to the nature of the historical accuracy of the house, but also financially viable for us to do it. And again, the only way we've been able to find that, to make sense of doing that, was to bring 4 units in, because the deconstruction on the house side is so enormous. There is so much, these are full gut projects. These are all the way to the studs, new wiring, new plumbing, new HVAC, the entire things are brand new houses, re-insulated drywall, and then we start back and we go put all of our historical trim back in. So when you come in, you see it looks just like it was supposed to, like it never had anything done to it, and that's what we want. So that's my reasoning, the reasoning we decided to choose it, and the reason why we've come here to ask for the variances to do the project.
Okay. You guys going to speak, or are you just going to stand behind because he did such a good job speaking?
Well,
I think I would maybe just reinforce some of the comments from.
I can get your name and address.
Brock Beckman with Des Moines Building and Land. I'm the president, and I live at 6003 Waterbury Circle in Des Moines. I'd maybe just reinforce some of Trevor's commentary on our commitment and belief that there are a lot of assets in this neighborhood, I think, that go unappreciated by a lot of people. And so we absolutely agree 100% with the staff in terms of working toward that long-term vision and making some positive progress. Density we know is a concern, and we've done a handful of density reduction projects. We're in the middle of one now with the Marie Apartments, 10 to 1. To a single family. And they're complex, they're expensive, they're risky. The income's not there with the rents in the neighborhood, but we believe in the neighborhood. And so we certainly understand that we've got a small lot here and there are concerns there. We understand the long-term vision for the neighborhood. We agree, we're working towards that, but I think it's important to keep in mind these multifamily dwellings realistically are going to continue to be part of the mix for a while in this neighborhood. You have people that want to rent because of where it is, because of the college. There's a lot of great assets. I don't think long-term we'll get to a point where this is all single families with these structures. And so just wanted to kind of reinforce, we agree with the staff and where they're coming from in terms of long-term vision. We're trying to work toward that as well, and we think projects like this are part of that mix.
Mel?
A couple questions for you guys. You sound very enthusiastic about this. Sounds like you do have some experience working within the city and within this neighborhood. And kind of, but as you said, it's expensive, it's risky, you got to make this flow. So my question would be, why did you not come to us before you bought the property and said, here's what we'd like to do, and it's going to be expensive and it's going to be risky, so before we buy it, we want to check it out and see if we can do it? It looks like you kind of cart in front of the horse here.
We had to, at the time we bought it, it was a package.
Okay.
And they said we had very short time to close. And so
Okay.
unfortunately.
So they had other properties with this that
Yep.
looked good and
Yep.
you wanted to help with. This kind of went along with it.
Yeah, and those are,
Looked mostly good.
yeah.
Right, looked mostly good.
and
Right.
yeah,
I know that no project's easy or someone else would have done it already, right?
It was for sale for, and
Okay.
over a year. It did sit for sale for over a year. And that,
Okay.
that's something that we did take into consideration, but again, we had such short time, we said, we'll find a way.
Okay.
You know.
Just as Tom said, telling the story I was just curious. It
Yep.
sounds like you don't think lightly or jump in without checking things out. So this was part of the deal. We've discussed a little bit about what you wanted to do, sizes, square footages. Have you developed any kind of floor plans or sketches or anything besides just kind of the site plan that you showed us?
Yeah, we have most of that done. We didn't turn it in. When I talked to Phil about it, he said, just give us what you can now that's
Okay.
hard, which was the drawing, and then we
Sure.
can go from there. When you do a density reduction, you have to have all your drawings submitted the day you do your permits anyway. So when I bring those, I bring them and say, here it is. And
Right. I mean, I always say it doesn't hurt to bring your A game if that's
Sure.
something you had. It doesn't hurt to have it here to show
Not
us.
finalized yet,
So we can kind of see, okay.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak in support? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Any last questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public portion, go to board.
Well, I have a general question for staff. Do you know of any higher-end conversions in this neighborhood where, you're talking about taking this big old house, about 2,900 square feet, and going to cut it in 2 units, 1,450 square feet apiece. Do you know of any other rental units in this area, 1,450 square feet, that kind of thing?
I think there's been some of it. I don't know if could think of one that would be a house like this.
Any of the condo conversions at 1,450 square feet? There was one south of the Quick Trip on 31st.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you're talking about the flats there, south of
Yeah.
Come and Go on 31st.
Yeah. I don't think
and-
there's anything that big.
Probably not of the unit size, no.
Yeah.
There's certainly been some that have gone to single family, but I wouldn't say that they were this type of a house. They were probably had even more elements, historic elements to them, even larger homes than this.
This kind of a property, if you're only going to allow 2 units, sounds to me like a rental property for great
And again,
professors that
yeah.
are visiting.
Yeah, I mean, again, and we looked at this and we thought, taking that main home to 2 units seemed like a reasonable thing. Taking it to 1 could actually be pretty tough, I think.
Well, the other thing is that you could probably sell it as an owner-occupied duplex, perhaps.
Well,
that way get financing.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. If you look at this block, that's not where it's at yet. I mean, I'm not trying to make an argument for the appellants or anything.
You want properties improved.
It's definitely something in the middle, and, in my conversations with them, I indicated, you're going to have to demonstrate to the board if there is something unique in terms of the marketability and those types of things, so.
Okay.
And nothing was presented of that other than conversationally, so I wanted to, when we do our staff reports, we base it on what we have, so.
Any other questions, Mel?
Eric, in your staff recommendations, you're kind of recommending approval of kind of a different approach here. You'd grant them exceptions for the minimum lot width so they can renovate the house into a 2-family dwelling unit.
Correct.
If they wanted to do the main house and turn it into a 3-family dwelling unit, would that change the minimum lot area or the exemptions
Yeah,
that you
you
need?
still need some of the relief, or let's say.
Would you need more relief than what you're going for?
Let's say you went with 1 unit in the carriage house.
Yes.
Then it would require the same basic relief other than In fact, it'd be exactly the same.
as what they're proposing here with 4.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
You wouldn't have the setback relief for the use of the carriage house if all the units were in the main structure.
Main house, okay.
Thanks, Eric. Close the public portion, then go to board decision. Quiet group.
I'm not real comfortable with the carriage house. That's what's bothering me.
Normally, I would be too, but I like the plan they put forward. And it won't happen, I'm assuming it won't happen, unless this gets piggybacked on top of it. Fair assessment? No, it's hard to say.
I'm concerned if we do convert the carriage house, how that looks. It is not a house. It does not look like a house.
Garage,
It's a garage. We had a case on East Grand over near the new Latino village where somebody had a little like hut out back and they were converting it to some kind of, it was a tiny house, but even that looked fairly kind of silly. I'd like to know if they were going to use this carriage house, how they would make it look like it's a dwelling rather than a garage with a door in it. For somebody to get in and out. I'm kind of hung up on this carriage house thing as well. I'm not too enthused about that idea. I think we've been trying to stay away from that, even in, doesn't matter what neighborhood we're in, what our property values are, what our mix is. Looking at multifamily, I don't think we've been very enthused about this.
I'd rather see the house be made into a threeplex.
That's what I was leaning
Well,
toward.
wait a second. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, but if you're going to make the house into a duplex,
Okay.
you're going to rent 1,500 square feet at a time, or
That's
thereabouts.
good sized, yeah.
How many people are going to rent 1,500 square feet and not have a place to put their car? Like zero.
Right.
In other words, if I had the ability to spend nearly $1,500 to $2,000 a month on a place to live, I wouldn't want my car parked on the street, I mean, I don't think it makes any sense, any economic sense, to renovate this big old house into a duplex and not have any garage space.
In principle, I agree. Now, I think if you look at that building, I'm not sure how it was being
Or at
used
least
or,
bicycle space.
yeah. And if they're not going to use it for garage space, then we're taking our minimum lot area, and I think there'd be paving in there, and we wouldn't have open space then. I think right now there's open space. I don't think there's paving between the two. It just seems like we're putting a lot, and I see what these guys are trying to do here. They kind of had to take something along with something else here. I don't think this would be their normal pro forma here to just jump in on this by itself and do this.
I'd still rather see a threeplex and leave the carriage house as a garage.
I mean, right now it looks like a single car garage at the most, but
There is a little bit of paving. It doesn't go all the
There
way
is,
back where
okay.
they were showing it on their sketch.
Yeah.
but,
I mean,
there's
for off,
definitely-
to maneuver in and out, you'd almost have to set back a little further. And I know that's not the point of our discussion is maneuvering on site or anything yet, but it looks like a garage. It looks like a carriage house. It doesn't look like a place to live.
And am I correct that the carriage house was never issued a rental certificate anytime? It was a fiveplex in the house, so you had a
You know, I
2,900.
can't say that. We don't have wonderful records of rental certificates that far back.
But the records
In
you do
recent
have
history,
go
it has
far
not.
back, how far?
Well, even in what we have in what's called tide mark system.
Sure.
Back to 2001, there's no evidence that this was a unit.
Okay.
Since 2000.
So you can go back about 10
But
years.
the fiveplex was just the house.
Correct.
Yeah.
There was 5
So it
units.
could easily be made into a threeplex.
I'd let them discuss that with you. I'm not going to say anything
Yeah.
is easy, but,
Nothing.
But if,
Nothing's easy.
yeah. It's conceivable, yeah.
that may not be what they want, but if we were to approve any kind of requested exemptions here with what you're proposing as an alternative, could we change to take the existing vacant dwelling to be renovated to a 3-family dwelling unit, subject
Yeah.
to the following
I can
conditions?
tell you one thing about there's one twist when you make it a 3
Yeah,
unit dwelling. Then it requires a site plan under multiple family design guidelines.
Okay.
Then it also requires 1.5 spaces per unit, so it does change it a little bit.
1, 2, 3, so you
going
need
with 2
4.5
duplexes.
spaces.
2 duplexes is treated a little differently than a third.
So in a weird way, they need more parking, 4.5 spaces,
idea
than they would with 4
Duplexes
units.
only require 1 per unit.
Right.
Whereas a multiple unit apartment situation is 1.5 spaces per unit, which
Funny how
a
you
3
come up
unit
with
would actually drive 4 spaces.
Yeah. Okay.
So I did want to make sure you understood
Well-
what the outcome is if you went with a 3-unit main
Right.
dwelling.
On a short agenda, I don't want to be deferring stuff to the next one, but I wonder if maybe, depending on the way the discussion's going, if these guys might want to go back and rethink an approach and maybe come back with something a little different, or look at developing a real site plan beyond a sketch.
You're suggesting that if the applicant wanted to ask for a continuance at this point, you'd be inclined to grant it? Would you be inclined to ask for a continuance? Why don't you step forward and
Come on
ask
up
for it?
here.
Uh-oh.
I know that's a lot of excitement in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see how this is going, you know,
Right.
and I think we're kind of,
The one thing I would address on the threeplex in the house is the modern code wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It wouldn't, it's
Okay.
not, the Des Moines Building Code wouldn't allow that. It's going to be
The
frank.
way you have entrances, exits,
That's correct.
stairs, separated bathrooms.
Yeah, sprinklers. It's going to be very challenging, no matter how we do this
Okay.
with the department, to get them done as duplex.
So you think 2 is all you can get out of the house to meet code? Is it because the fire sprinklers are required if you get into 3 units?
Yeah, because this
Okay.
has no, as he said, it's completely lost all of its rights. We've
Okay.
lost all of our rights.
All right, so a 2-unit would not need fire sprinklers, a 3-unit does?
That's correct.
Okay.
And also, again, with your fire entrances, your points of egress are totally different with 3
Okay,
compared to 2.
because we aren't building permit folks,
Sure.
we're zoning board folks, so sometimes those crossovers, I know,
Sure.
can cause issues for you.
He doesn't want to put in an exterior elevator on me.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It'd be kind of cool. Or a crane.
do you think a month is a good enough lead time, or do you need?
Yes.
Because what I think you're hearing from us is that, why don't you come back, we want to address the carriage house issue.
Yep.
I guess, after listening to Tom, I'm kind of interested in seeing what kind of plans you'd have for parking. And so if you can get something put together along those 2 issues, does anybody else have any issue that they might want to have addressed?
Here would maybe be one just to throw out. What if the carriage house looked like a carriage house in the future with a real garage on the bottom,
Financially, you can't afford to do it. See, that's the whole issue is,
but you allowed someone to live in the top of the carriage house?
we can't do that, I don't think. I don't believe Des Moines allows that on the building side now. I think we'd have to look into that.
Or would that be our side?
They
That'd be
don't
building code.
allow that.
I don't think they allow
But,
it.
so full conversion, no garage and living would be allowed if we agree to it, but you can't split it.
That's correct, as
Okay.
far as I know on the building side.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Darn.
I know, nice thought.
Yeah, because then we could keep it looking like a carriage.
Well, to address it, it does have asbestos siding on it. That is the siding you see on it, and the original siding is underneath with the shakes up above. So what we would do is we would remove that and get to the original siding. That would be repaired, and then across the front, we actually hand build wooden windows, wooden operating windows that would go in to match the ones that are on the east and west side and also up above. So, and then it would have a historically accurate doors for both entrances. So the facade would look absolutely.
I'd say you'd want to get that drafted up.
Yep, I can do that.
Mr. Chairman, with the consent of the applicant, I'd move to continue this matter to the next regularly
Trying to help.
scheduled meeting on October 24th.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good plan, Mr. Clark. And I take that as a motion, so is there a second on that? Yeah, if you guys are good with that.
Yep, we're good with that.
Because I think that's going to benefit you in the long
Yes,
run.
I think so.
Can I add just one thing?
Sure.
It would make me feel much more comfortable if they would bring pictures of some of the things that you've done in the past.
Absolutely.
Some interior stuff, because.
Oh, absolutely.
And exteriors too.
I wanna see.
Before, after. that
Yes,
kind
we
of-
have numerous high-profile projects that are already completed
yeah.
in Drake, so
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
We can take you there if you'd like, no joke.
yeah.
I-
Or,
I-
if you have a
can
quick
see-
roster of some properties, I mean, I'm not
Yep.
familiar with all owners and developers, but
Yep.
sounds good.
I can email the board members and they can drive by if they.
Yep.
I will say,
fine.
in granting continuance, which we haven't done yet, that doesn't go light. That means that there is some leeway here that if you can do the kind of things that will address the concerns that we've got.
Yes.
It's going to go a long ways towards maybe getting an okay to do
Yep,
this. So,
we will put all that together.
thank you. Okay, but did I get a second from Linda on this?
I second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your effort out there. Item 9. This is a variance at 1200 Mulberry.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 9 is a request from Nationwide Insurance to install replacement signage within the existing sign frames that are on their parking garage. The subject property is the parking garage at the corner of Mulberry and 12th Street. Here's a photo of what is there now. If it looks familiar, it's because back in 2008, they came to this board to get the variances to do these signs.
Yes.
At that time, these two on the west side and these two on the south side were just considered art, since there was no text on them.
But didn't it relate to their product, which is insuring people? I'm teasing you, not them.
So what they're wanting to do now is replace those panels with these, which all 6 would have text.
Okay.
So now all 6 of them would be considered signs. So the appeals do sound pretty daunting. A variance of 860 square feet over the allowed 150 square feet of signs for the south wall, and then a variance of 860 square feet of signage over the allowed 150 square feet for the west wall. And here, these have the actual square footage of text. Like this one has, this is 115 square feet of text plus 45 square feet, et cetera. So they're fairly large banners. I believe they're each 10 feet by 30, or 10 by 33 in 3 2/3. So.
Okay.
And this is just the decision in order from 2008. At that time, the board put the conditions that the middle sign shall be limited to 112 square feet of text. And then the consent map, we had 1 card come back in support and 1 card come in opposition. Those are from the condos at the corner of Mulberry and 11th.
Is this within their line of sight?
I was going to say, where are the
No, it's actually on the,
other side?
yeah, it's on
I
the
thought
opposite
so.
side.
Okay.
So they can't see them from their front window? Or
Correct.
And are the new proposed banners, are they the same size as the existing ones?
Yeah, they're the exact same size.
Okay, just.
I believe they'd be reusing the frames. I've
Backer
looked
or
at
whatever.
too.
Was this not on the consent because it's a variance or because of the?
Yeah, just because it's a variance.
And it's a
Pretty
larger-
large variance.
And there was one opposition, so.
Are there only 6 of them? Are there 8 of them, or?
There's only 6. So.
Okay.
Staff has recommended approval subject to 3 conditions. 1, that the signs be installed by a contractor in accordance with the necessary permit. 2, that the sign shall substantially comply with the submitted design labeled concept 3B. That's this sheet here. And that means that if they ever would switch these out, it would have to come back to the board for review and approval at that time.
Okay.
And then number 3, there should be no signage installed on the Mulberry or 12th Street facades.
And when you say switch them out, what if they needed repair and they were doing it was very similar?
Yeah, as long as they're in accordance with this concept.
Okay, all right. If they put my face on it instead, it's okay and they wouldn't have to come back?
Well, that was my question.
That would create lots of accidents.
Leave that up there. My question is, are these people employed by the company, and if they're fired, what happens?
Yeah, that could be ugly.
Paid models.
Or convicted?
Bill Snow's picture appears. He's everywhere. All right.
I was going to say, I can just see Cindy.
Thank you, Bert.
Going down the wall, putting her face on one of those pictures. Oh, okay, is there any other real questions for staff?
No.
Thanks, Bert. Applicant or representative of the applicant?
Joe Phillips, Eagle Sign Company, 5130 Park Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa. So we installed those banners for Nationwide.
Okay.
We're their sign company. We do their work here locally. We installed those 4 years ago. Not those, but the current ones.
Yep.
And Nationwide has come back to us. This is what's there now.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to put up they want to freshen it up. They've been up for 4 years now, and they're starting to fade.
Yeah.
And they came back to us with this new design, and that's why we're here today asking you for this variance. And by adding this text, it's adding to the square footage. I did go to the actual job site and took some pictures so that we can kind of give you guys a better perspective of what this building looks like from MLK and that sort of thing. I even took, well, let's start with this one. This is down on the railroad tracks, obviously. Looking east at the parking garage. Try to give you a perspective that, you know, they're really not that large once you get away from them.
And particularly if you're walking along the railroad track.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I won't say anything.
This is one, I tried to take a picture right on the corner so you can see all six right off MLK, just right off the sidewalk there. So if you can see, if you've got foot traffic, that's what they're looking at.
Right.
Even there, they don't look that large. I mean, they're nice looking, but this is looking, I'm directly south looking north, right across to MLK, at the 3 on the south elevation.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see there, they're pretty faded. That's an angle from Southwest 19th Street, I think. Or what's that street? It's a major intersection to the west of the garage. Now, I went inside the garage.
Cool.
And these objects here are the back of the banner. I don't know if you can see that or not. But that's a display unit, and this is a display unit. And I'm actually looking south, so there's really,
Between them.
there's nothing out there.
There's going to be someday soon.
Hopefully,
Yes.
that'd be nice.
Good stuff.
And then this is looking out the garage to the
Oh,
west.
that on the other hand.
Just trying to get this perspective that there's no condos or apartments out there, that people are actually going to be looking at these banners 24/7.
Right.
And that's just inside, that's behind the banner frames. So, but that's all. They just want to freshen them up, and they want to add that copy and,
Yes.
And you're okay with staff recommendations?
oh yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Are those your relatives that are on?
Yeah, who's on there? Yeah, right, yeah.
They're all your relatives.
His clip art.
Next round, we want our picture.
So I've got lots of pressure on me here today.
And Joe, I'm kind of curious, related to you, not this. We gave you a variance on a sign a few years ago so people could find your business. Remember
Yes.
that? Is that working
We
okay?
got it up and it works great.
Good,
It's amazing
good.
how signs work.
Okay. When I drive by, I see it. I've often wondered.
Way to follow up. That's
Good
good.
commercial. Good commercial for yourself.
So,
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anybody else here to speak in support? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Any last questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to public, close the public portion, go to board decision.
Second.
Yes.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item 10 is conditional use permit at 1658 East Euclid.
Got one card.
Eric, before you start, the agenda that I have on page 6 shows that it's at 1628 East Euclid, conditional use permit, and then down below, premises affected 1658 East Euclid.
Yeah.
1658 is the correct.
Is the correct address. And when you notice this, Did you notice it as 1628 or 1658?
We noticed it by the parcel, so I'll show you how we noticed it.
No, I just want to make sure that you're okay on this.
I'm not sure there is a 1628.
All right.
This is an aerial of the site.
Okay.
This recently, or has just recently gone through the rezoning process as well. As on this map, in fact, it was showing as M1, but it has now been rezoned to M2, which would allow them to request this conditional use. The property was most recently used as a warehouse, and what they are now proposing is to go in and use this entire site for a wooden pallet recycling. They would be recycling and constructing wooden pallets, bringing in both previously used material and new material to then construct what are new pallets. In fact, and I'll let them describe their process to you, but basically if you're looking at the buildings, there would actually be a conveyor in this area that would allow them, or I think it's for a kiln that actually does something to sterilize the existing material to kill off any insect eggs, that type of thing. It's going to be added. And also in this area will be the chipping function, which because of the building codes, it's going to be more reasonable for them to do that outside the building. However, since it's going to be between two buildings, unless you're on site, you're really not going to see that activity at all. The primary concern I think staff wants to make sure is that materials that come out of this chipper, which actually are a commodity that they would sell to another party, there will be a certain amount of material that's not resold that does have to go to the landfill, and they have to accumulate that and then transfer it. And that's what really is driving this to be an M2 use. And staff's main concern is that this doesn't accumulate on site and become a nuisance. And so we want to have some conditions in place which would ensure that they are not going to accumulate that material. It's basically the material that would become waste material on the site. And we also want to make sure the material that is going to be a commodity is kept in an orderly fashion, like in bunkers or in containers that keep it from either washing, when it rains, washing into the drainage system onto other properties, or blowing because it's piled. So we have, if you look at our conditions that we're recommending, we are recommending in favor of this as a use of the site, but we do want to make sure that the conversion of these buildings is done in a fashion that meets all the building codes, that any storage of equipment, containers, raw commodities, and recycled material shall be screened from public view by fencing or landscaping in accordance with the site plan. Really, the only public views are going to be from the Euclid side of things. There may be some, although there's a huge foliage here at this point. So seeing back into this area is very difficult. If you look at the photos from across the street, if you're trying to get a sense of where this is, I'm standing in the parking lot of the Boy Scout headquarters there for Mid-Iowa Council, looking to the north. But we would envision that some type of screening would occur in an area to prevent any storage areas from being seen from public view. All waste material may not be stored outside for a period greater than 2 weeks before transferring, and shall be stored on a dustless surface in transfer containers or within constructed bunkers. And then the same for the commodities, although they may be stored indefinitely until they're needed or sold. And then no outside operation of the chopping and grinding equipment shall occur between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Mel?
Eric, do you have city ordinances that relate to the control of any fugitive dust from any chopping or grinding operations?
They'll be subject to Polk County's
Okay,
requirements.
Polk County's air quality regulations?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think they should be familiar with those
okay,
based on their past operation. They currently operate in Des Moines in another location that
Okay.
they're moving out of, so.
and they have an outdoor processing operation at that facility as well?
I don't know.
Maybe I can ask them. Okay, all right.
They probably shouldn't, but.
Okay, well, yeah. We don't need to get into that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Eric. Applicant or representative of the applicant?
Hi, I'm Jeff DeVries with Westwind Logistics, located 190 Southeast 34th Street, Des Moines. We are the potential buyer of this property, and I think to Mel's point earlier, putting the cart before the horse, we're trying to get this rezoned prior to closing on the property. Property has been vacant for approximately a year and a half up to this point. So kind of talking a little bit about what Eric was talking about in our operation. If you look at the facility, we're a pallet recycling business. So what we do is we'll take pallets in from various distribution centers or manufacturers, and we will refurbish those and sell them again as used pallets. Part of that is that we'll get pallets that are too broken to fix. And so we have what we call a tear down operation, which is will be inside, and there's a series of saws that goes through, and there's lumber that's recycled because of that we use on building pallets. And then there's also scrap that we can't use, and that'll go into our wood chipper or mulching machine. And that's what Eric was talking about, that will be in between the buildings here. And the machine will be brand new, first of all. It's a Roto Chopper is the brand. It's a 350 horsepower. It has all the latest bells and whistles on it as far as containing dust. It has a sprinkler, it has a shroud, has a chute, basically. So this will go through a grinding operation and dumped right into a trailer. And then that trailer we sell as mulch or sawdust or whatever. Then there's also a byproduct of that. There's magnet systems in there that take the nails out, and we sell that as scrap to actually a neighbor on Euclid, Ultra Steel Recycling. As far as being seen from the road, there's a fence here, a chain link fence here, and what we're having is our contractor, as part of doing some remodeling on this site, will put slats so that from the street you can't see the back. And like Eric said, there's quite a bit of trees and foliage back there. What else do I need to address, or questions, I guess?
Where's your existing operation here?
190 Southeast 34th Street.
Okay.
It's just south of the fairgrounds.
Okay.
And right now, when we pile this outside, and per city ordinance, it can't get too big, and then we go through a grinder that's outside, and we have to comply with dust code and so forth. And again, our new grinder actually will comply 10 times better.
So you're going to close this one down then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Would this give you a better facility from a production management standpoint if you get to move in here?
Much better. I think all told, there's about 60,000 square foot in those couple of buildings under roof. Right now, we have like 15.
Okay, so the more that's under a roof, the better for you guys.
Right. I mean, we're a lot more efficient that way. Less of an eyesore, if you will.
Right. Okay.
And it's better for our customers. I mean, some of our customers are food grade. They don't like pallets sitting outside and creating or getting bird droppings or whatever, dust or whatever. So.
Now, with any, you mentioned like sprinklers, I'm assuming that's to help control Any potential for fire, or is it more of lubrication and
On the grinder itself, the
Yeah.
sprinkler system is designed to control dust. So
Dust,
as it
okay.
wets
All right.
the mulch as it's going through the conveyor,
Okay.
so there's not,
And you have a water recovery system, you don't have any water runoff issues from that? It doesn't just
No.
discharge out in the lot? So no extra stormwater issues or anything like that?
not at all.
Okay.
The building will be sprinklered, and with code, we're upgrading that to an EFSR system for storing.
Unlike
wood.
that place in Urbandale we always hear about.
I will not talk ill about my competitors.
Okay.
What are your hours of operation?
Currently, we run 2 shifts, basically from starting at 6 in the morning.
Okay.
That's our recycling or our hours that we're open or have people there. The actual grinding itself will probably take, obviously, will take place within the daylight hours, and it'll only take 3 to 4 hours per day for this machine to grind through what we produce anyway, so.
You all okay with the staff recommendations here, 1 through 6?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
My question is, when I drive down Euclid and I look at your business, what am I going to be able to see from drive-by?
You're going to be able to see the picture that Eric put up of the front of the building, and.
And that's it? I'm not going to see pallets, I'm not going to see...
Absolutely not. I mean, we're doing this for inside storage. I mean, the city code allows us to stack somewhat outside, but again, everything will be hidden. But our intent is to keep everything inside.
You'll probably make it look even better with some improvements to the
Yes.
outside of the lot and everything.
There's city code for landscaping in the front and
Yep.
those sort of things. We'll fence, the back is not fenced in, we'll fence that in. Just, there are campers back there in those woods,
Yes,
so.
your own security issues.
Protection.
Something I hadn't heard before.
Oh, just make sure you check on what kind of fencing that you can use. Check with the permit staff.
Yep.
Okay. If you use razor wire, you might need extra permits for that. Oh darn, I brought it up.
There we go. Let the cat out of the bag. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak in support? Anybody here to speak in opposition? I'll ask questions for staff. Hearing none, close the public portion, then go to board decision.
Well, I would move to approve the conditional use permit as requested, subject to staff recommendations 1 through 6.
Okay,
I'll second.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
I'm pretty sure he.
Look for the improvement. And our last item of the day is item 11, a variance and exception at 401 Southeast 5th.
And what happened to 12?
Continued.
Continued, okay, that was right, okay.
And so they're not sticking around. Is anybody here sticking around for item 12? Just want to make sure it's been continued, so we're not going to hear it. Okay, thank you.
Item number 11 has 2 appeals. One, they are requesting an exception to the minimum required front yard setback, and 2, they are requesting a variance to the number of required off-street parking stalls. The subject property is the corner of Southeast 5th and Raccoon Street. It was most recently been occupied as the doggy daycare. It's now in the process of being converted to a restaurant use. A restaurant use is an allowed use there, so the board's not really considering whether or not to allow the restaurant use. It's just determining today whether or not they need to provide off-street parking and whether the building addition can be with a similar setback to the existing building. The subject property is located just north of the East Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. There's the existing Capitol Dog and Pub restaurant just to the east of the subject property, and the city owns some land here in between. And there's some other industrial uses in the immediate vicinity. Right now, the property is zoned M1 for light industrial. You should probably know there's been some plans done in the past few years for the market district, it's called, for this area, and the overall, the grand plan would be to have this develop as a mixed use and density neighborhood with buildings pushed up to the streets and more of a pedestrian feel than it has today, and add more housing in the area as well. Here's just a really rough sketch of this site. There's a building located right here, and then they're proposing to do a addition onto the side of the restaurant. The addition wouldn't be any closer to the front property line than the existing building. That's why it's able to be requested as an exception rather than a variance, even though it is would typically require a variance. And then they're also requesting that they not be required to do any off-street parking on this property. Just to give you some history on the site, they have submitted a site plan to the Permit Development Center for the renovations of the building. That original site plan draft did show some off-street parking located to the south and to the east of the building here. So originally their thinking was they may be able to do some parking. They've since decided that they'd prefer to keep it as open space and maybe do a patio here. So they're requesting a variance of all of the minimum required off-street parking. I can let them address the board if they're willing to do a compromise, maybe meet in the middle or anything like that. Staff is concerned with not providing any off-street parking. We already are aware of a parking issue in the area from the Capital Dog and Pub restaurant. We know that cars are often, park on the street, which is fine, but we also have seen cars parking on the city land here. They're supposed to be chaining that off so cars can't park right there, but it has still been happening. If you've been in the area, you know that it's a pretty popular restaurant. It does get a lot of customers, so we're concerned with adding a second restaurant here without any off-street parking is going to just create a bigger problem than that's already there. So
Where is Davis Mechanical? They wrote an objection.
that's this property
AJ
right across.
Allen?
Yeah.
AJ Allen.
Yeah.
So
And what's the city's plan for this property that's adjoining the proposed site here?
you mean this parcel right here?
Yes. Why doesn't the city just sell it to them? Then they'll have lots of room for parking, and
And
they can lease
that may be,
it to the other restaurant.
That may be a possibility. I know there's been discussions with real estate. I don't know offhand where those discussions have led, but
They're not requesting, they're actually requesting not to put parking on the land that they.
That's because they want to put some additional patio area,
Right.
party area, tents, things like that.
My understanding is, with regard to the city-owned property, is that at whatever point they release the project for Southeast Connector is when we will be able to start considering disposal of excess property and things like that.
So the city is
There's
still...
probably a little bit of a time frame before that can actually be disposed of.
City doesn't have the legal ability to sell that at this point?
I'm not sure if it's a legal constraint or a policy constraint.
Right. So until the street gets connected on down a little further, things get settled down.
Why didn't the city make a deal to lease this to them?
And that's, I don't know if they've, the applicant can speak to the.
But the city's lot's
negotiations
not
with our-
improved either, is it?
What's that?
The city's lot isn't improved for parking either, is it? So
No,
what
it's
good would
not.
it be
It's
to
not.
lease land to someone who has plenty of land to do their own
We
parking?
would probably need to vacate it first because it was used for
Okay.
the.
Unless we're talking about the Capital Dog people, which my understanding is they're not in compliance with anything they were supposed to be doing to begin with. So, but that's a separate issue.
I'm not gonna.
That's a separate issue.
Doesn't sound like a question, so I'll just.
Yeah. Good one. Okay.
just to give you a better idea on that addition, the original plan submitted shows the addition being located, I guess, towards the south end of the east facade. They're now wanting to shift it to be more flush with the north end of the building. There's also an overhead garage door here that they would be able to use the opening if they would put that addition there. And you just seen the staff report. Staff did recommend denial of both appeals, but we are more comfortable with the board granting the appeal for the setback than we are with the board granting the appeal for the off-street parking. So, as I just alluded to, staff has recommended denial of both of the appeals. So, are there any questions?
Doesn't appear to be. Thanks, Bert. Applicant or representative of the applicant?
Brian Tigner, 400 Southeast 6th.
Sorry, could you use that a little louder, please?
Brian Tigner, 400 Southeast 6th. Not a great public speaker. We are the Capitol Pub and Hot Dog. And Mel, I'm sorry that we had a lot of hiccups putting that old house together, but we are in 100% compliance today.
I've been down to your business twice, and I can never find a place to park. That tells me something's wrong.
Okay, so we could not operate.
Help me out.
We've had an opportunity to possess this property next to us. Can I use the projector?
Sure.
Yes, go
Lay the
ahead.
stuff right on top of it.
Just right on top of this
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. Then you can look up and see the stuff.
And when we purchased 400 Southeast 6th, it was M1 as this property as well. We've taken a look at the long-term vision for the market district, and C3B seems to be the direction that this neighborhood is going in. So somehow, we were hoping this board could lead us down that avenue. Now, if that means just zoning, just strictly going through the zoning situation, procedure, then maybe that's where we need to move to. However, we would like to keep the pace of this project. We have started. We do have financial obligation, which, again, the carriage in front of the horse, I get your point very clear with that, would probably be your reply to us on that. So I'm going to turn this over to my wife and then Pat Becker here, and they're a little better speaking than I am, that maybe hopefully can persuade your decision of how you could maybe work with us in a transition phase for us to develop this property. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to try to do it. So.
Good afternoon. I'm Tanya Tigner, owner of Capitol Pub and Hot Dog, 400 Southeast 6th Street. My husband and I are very passionate about this neighborhood. We feel this neighborhood obviously has a lot of potential, and what we are trying to do as entrepreneurs is offer a restaurant or a place for family and people that live downtown in that neighborhood to go to. We know that this is the beginning stages of the new market district, and we are looking at this long term. It is a place that we want to be, and we have invested in this, the Capitol Pub and the property next door, very much invested in that area. What I think we would like to do is, I have looked at some other information on the new market district, and it's my understanding that they are not wanting to eliminate parking, but maybe minimize parking. And so if we can maybe meet halfway and do possibly half of the parking lot that was suggested initially, or if you could give us maybe some time, 18 months, to maybe look at this again, we would appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to Pat Becker.
Pat Becker, 2808 Berkshire Drive, Norwalk. I'm a potential partner in this project with Brian and Tanya. And when I got started in this, I read the urban design study that the city had put forth toward this district. And doing some research, seeing the zoning and the zoning restrictions that they're going to be going to, C3B. The adjacent property is zone C3B, where off-street parking is permitted. There isn't a requirement for parking. There's also a heavy emphasis within the design guidelines to promote green space and pedestrian access to businesses and shops. Both of these variants, or the variance and the exception that we're asking for, I feel would fall within the future zoning for the district. So we wouldn't be going outside of that. We're simply at the forefront of development in this area for bar, restaurant spaces. What I foresee in this area, kind of what one of the city staff talked about, is more of an outdoor space, patio. I don't know if you can zoom that in any more than that, or no, this right here. This is the one I want right here. Maybe more of an outdoor space setting, tables, potentially some recreational area, and that is yet to be decided, between maybe horseshoe pits, areas where pedestrians and bicyclists can come and interact in green space, not necessarily a hard parking lot. Within one of the, I'm not sure, this is a planning and design guideline theme. And within this, I found this on the city zoning, planning and zoning website. It says, Jeff Speck, former director of design for the National Endowment of the Arts, visited Des Moines recently. He advised against the vast areas of parking in downtown. If you want to keep people walking, pedestrians must feel safe, comfortable, and entertained. Nothing is more boring than a parking lot. Whether they are open air or 6 stories tall, parking lots must be banished along any street in hopes of attracting walking. My vision for this project in this area is, like I said, promoting pedestrian access. This property doesn't front MLK per se by its boundaries, but it's right there. There's an easement or some green space there. I want to work with that walkway with the bicyclists that are already there, or pedestrians, and providing a sidewalk perhaps that would bring them into the area and allow them to enjoy either one of these businesses. And I feel like these, I'll say it again, not to be redundant, but both of these, the variance of the parking spaces and the setback issue, still fall within the C3B guidelines that this area is moving toward. And I feel it's just a matter of time before it's rezoned to that anyway.
Now, you haven't had a chance to see the person that was in objection to this, and they have a pretty different view. You want to grab that card, Mel? And
Yeah, have you guys had a chance to
you guys across the street.
see this quick? We might take a read of that fast.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion of that.
Okay.
May I, or am I?
Just whoever.
Record. You know, AJ, I think is.
Well, let's read it out loud.
They understand it, and we've had a lengthy conversation with the city planners. They know themselves, the scrap processor, these other businesses are, for lack of better words, on the chopping block. They have been, underlyingly asked to possibly look for better suitable space for their businesses. So I think that it's just kind of bittersweet for them. Yes, we are kind of cramping things up down there, but we're cramping it up in a spectrum that we think this design guidelines is looking for pioneers to kind of forefront this down here. And, maybe we're not the Donald Trumps of today, but there's really not much going on there down there yet. I mean, there's road infrastructure and big, great things, but as far as grassroots, bottoms-up business, as Mr. Brian Myers likes to describe my wife and I, and very supportive of everything we're doing down there because it's his ward. He's up against it with A.J. Allen and the scrap processor and the others down there because in his opinion, in order to ever achieve this market district over our lifetime, either they have to move or we have to move, or this doesn't happen. That's my opinion on A.J. Allen. And Mark Allen was over for...
You see the map that's up on the board there. Would you point to that's the subject property we're discussing?
Yes.
Where is your current
just
place of business?
Adjacent there, right there.
Right. The one that says C3B there?
Yep.
And now, where is the scrap processor?
The junkyard right there.
Yep.
So he's catty corner.
Correct.
Okay.
And AJ's right directly to the north.
All right.
We have a conflict at the lunch hour only.
Now, if if this board was to grant you an exception of 18.65 feet less than the minimum required 25 foot of front yard setback, that would allow you to put your addition on the property, is that right? On the building?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, once you do that, you still have, if we would require that some parking be done, but also that other area be set aside, this is what we used to do in housing for the elderly projects, we just say, well, okay, we want you to have the ability to put in 14 spaces, but we're only going to require 7 for, a period of time until we see which way this whole thing breaks down, Would you be able to do something like that?
That's definitely an option.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would allow you to build the building, the addition.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you would agree.
Moving that addition would not stop us from adding parking. It wouldn't take over parking area by allowing that, if
But
that's your
you would
question.
agree that there would be a set aside of the space that you weren't going to build more stuff.
Correct.
So you couldn't have parking.
We could definitely agree to that.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
And to your earlier question, we're in contact with Phil Wagman in the real estate division over the piece in between. And the way it's been left to us, our last meeting, Tanya was here, if we can provide a proper site plan to show something that suits council, there's something working there as well.
Yeah. Okay. But you would have control of the 2 adjoining properties to the city property, so
Yes.
I would assume that you would be the #1 candidate to buy.
We hope so.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
our belief that that's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to kind of reinforce what he said, the business that is in favor of this is also doesn't have longevity in that area as the type of business that we're trying to promote. In the East Village area, that's zone C3B as well. Numerous bars and restaurants there that provide off-street parking.
Just East Village, Court
Yep.
Avenue style, you eat spaghetti.
It's everywhere in this downtown overlay district, and I feel that this is the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak in support? Anybody here to speak in opposition?
Gary Johnston, live at 2105 Cherry Street in Granger, and I'm the owner of the building.
Okay.
When Doggy Daycare moved out, we were trying to look for tenants that would be approved by the city of Des Moines. Problem we run into immediately was the C3 zoning, and that's what we were told, and I got letters sent to me requiring who I could sell it to or who I could even rent to at that point. And so it kind of put us between a rock and a hard place, because we wanted to get somebody in there that would beautify the area and do a good job. And we were really up against the wall because we didn't know what to do. This is our retirement. And, where do we go? So we did a lot of praying about it. In a few days, we run into Brian and got to talking to him because we'd put a sign for sale in the yard. And it just seemed like it was a perfect fit because he needs additional parking. He needs additional area to start a new business that he wanted to do. And we talked to him about what they had in mind, and we were impressed with him, quite frankly, because the drive that's in him and his wife is unbelievable what they want to do and what they're striving for. And in that respect, that's one of the reasons why, it's in I don't need to go on about it, but the second thing is about the remnant left over by M.L. King. We were told, when did we come back from Katrina? 2005, 2004? That we would be offered to buy the remnant when M.L. King was completed. And that has never come about yet, so I don't know if there's still things that's got to be done before we could even have that opportunity. But we were told point blank that, yes, you will. There was used to be an alleyway that was on the east of us, between us and the barbecue there.
Sir, could you point out on the map what area you're talking about?
The area that I'm talking about is where the alleyway was.
Yes?
And then they said they would be, they didn't know exactly the footage, but between ML King and our fence line at that point in time, this side and right next to the ML King,
Okay.
would be an additional remnant.
Where is your property right now?
My property's up southeast fifth, 401 southeast fifth.
I thought that was the one we were talking about.
He owns it, he's selling it.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
that I didn't know.
Well, I thought, is he for this or against it?
I'm
Four. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a little slow getting up.
All right.
I jumped ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I turned 73, so.
That's all right.
That's all right.
Okay.
But anyway, that's what we were told, that would be available for it. And that's one of the things that I had told him, so I feel kind of guilty here that I didn't research that further. I thought this, I don't know the man's name, but his office used to be right outside his door.
Real
on
estate.
the right-hand side.
Yep.
And so anyway, in that respect, I was the one that told him that we would be able to purchase this. Either he could or we could. We were going to just make an agreement between the two of us. But now I'm seeing a little difference of opinion on what's happening here. I don't know if it's got a little vendetta against them or not. I don't know. I hope not. I hope that's not what it is. But anyway, I just wanted to speak my piece.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak in support? No way. Anybody here to speak in opposition? And we're going to get,
Sue Ann Donovan, Zoning Enforcement. I think we need to boil this down to what's going on here. This is not C3B. At some point, it may be C3B. That is not the requirements that they're currently living under. Even if it is C3B at some point in the future, doesn't mean A.J. Allen is moving out within the next 27 minutes after it's rezoned. That's a long-term effort that will take years and years. The property that's currently being used as a hot dog pub does not have any required parking and creates a huge parking problem down there. They need required parking in order to have their customers not be parking all over on the streets and in A.J. Allen and wherever. The city is willing, as was previously stated, to consider a lease agreement or a purchase agreement of their property. So there's really no reason to have a waiver of the required parking when they can meet it, and in this case should be meeting it. It's a necessity to have someplace for their customers to park. It's there. It's not like they can't do it. So in my opinion, they should have to have the required parking. It's available. It's not a hardship.
So I'm confused now. I'm always confused. The C3B property that you see, that they own,
They
right?
rezoned that to C3B
Yes. And the
before
city
they,
had the option at the time of the rezoning to require some parking there, and they did not do so. So they can hardly be blamed now.
but they're expanding.
No, they're not expanding.
They're opening another restaurant on the
That's
same
correct.
site.
That's what they're doing.
Yes.
It's a different deal.
They could go in and rezone it to C3B if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, but they want to move this project
Yes.
along.
I'm objecting to the
To
waiver
them-
of,
To them moving it along?
no, to not require, to having required parking
But we're now
under the
talking-
zoning ordinance.
Yeah, but will it make a substantial bit of difference if they have 7 parking spaces instead of 14?
I believe that they need the required parking, yes, and I believe they can meet it. I believe that they have the ability to meet it. There's no hardship for them not meeting it.
Okay.
And I believe that's consistent with staff recommendations.
Sue, Ann, you mentioned that the city has offered to sell them that extra property, because I hadn't heard that.
I went in and talked to Full Wagman and said the lease agreement is what they're they're discussing with them right now. I believe there was some discussion about buying it.
Yeah, but are we talking about a 50-year lease, or are we talking about a 5-year lease? I mean, how do you improve a piece of property you only have a 5-year lease on? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any economic sense. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
For Phil Wegman to say, well, we'll lease it to him,
I think he's also said that he'll sell it to them.
but the title holder of the property just stood up and said
He said he
can't get him
didn't
to
know.
talk to him.
He said he didn't know.
Ah, I see, okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Sue Ann. It's a little bit unique, so, yeah, we're going to let you guys have 3 minutes to give us a rebuttal or any closing comments that you might have.
I'm just simply going to ask, however you can help lead us down this road. If it comes down to it and we have to do all this hard surface that all of the research that the city has for the Market District, this paving is just not in the plan in the future. Could we consider an 18-month phase to get 50% of it in? That's what I would ask for.
I still believe that this project falls within, I know that she said this may or may not be zoned. I find it hard to believe that the city of Des Moines is going to spend several $1 million on a design study laying out how a district's going to be developed. They're doing the infrastructure upgrades now. ML King's completed. They're starting their second phase going to Highway 5. They just resurfaced and redid the infrastructure on Southeast 6th in connection to that node. That zoning is going into the C3B direction. As far as I understood, C3B meant you didn't have to provide any off-street parking. The current businesses there operating under that. She said that that's not true, which I don't see how it can be. This would fall under those same guidelines, and this is. We're not asking for anything outside of the scope of the vision for that district and the plan, the design study plan. It falls right in line with it. We want to promote green space and enable pedestrians and bicyclists to move within the district.
Thank you.
I just wanted to reiterate that Phil Wagaman is the individual that we talked to. My wife and I both talked to him in a meeting room right outside here. And he did say that it would be a remnant. And it would be for sale, and we would have the opportunity to buy it. I'm not lying, and if Phil does remember it, it's perhaps this goes back to after Hurricane Katrina. I'm a storm adjuster for insurance companies, or was, and maybe that's too far back in his memory bank, because there wasn't anything in writing. It was strictly verbal.
Mm-hmm.
But we did have a conversation with him. So for him to say he doesn't remember, I'll buy that. His memory is one thing that I'm losing too, so, but I do remember that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming back. Any last questions for staff?
Yes, I have one question.
Go ahead, Mel.
Whose
Sure.
site plan was drawn up that showed parking kind of looping around the building there? Who did that?
That was a plan that they had done.
Okay, and how many parking spaces?
This showed they could have 18, can you zoom out there?
Yeah. This is what they're operating under. That's how they're able to get permits and.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
right now, they're obligated to provide parking, and they're now asking to.
So they only have to provide parking for 14, even though they show 17 spaces,
They show 8 and
or 18, and this still includes their expansion on that plan. And we still have considerable open space, we have pedestrian access, we have landscaping, which is what you require as well.
Correct.
You guys just don't allow people to do wall-to-wall parking with parking lots everywhere.
Right.
They got to have open space. That's a third of the cases we get here, is people talking about you're requiring too much open space, you're requiring too much landscaping. I want to pave it wall-to-wall. Okay.
And you don't have any serious objection to them moving the
if they wanted to move
adjunct building, north?
Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any objection to that? And to do that, we have to grant them the exception, right?
correct.
And if we were to say that we we would like, would it be a variance if we said you build 7 now and set aside the property for additional 7?
If you would say they build 7 now, you'd only have to grant an exception of 7 less than the required 14.
Okay.
Then you would put a condition that
They must maintain the green space or the parking spaces. They don't have to put them in, but they must maintain them for a period until this rezoning, whatever the city decides to do here is decided.
And like they mentioned, the overall vision for this area would be to have the C3B district. That district allows buildings to be built up to the front property line. It doesn't require off-street parking. They did get that for their restaurant on the same block to the west. However, knowing the situation it is today, that even if they would apply for rezoning for this site to C3B, I know staff would at least recommend that a condition of that rezoning be that they provide some off-street parking. Whether or not that's how it ultimately goes, I can't say, but I know that would be staff's recommendation, is that if they would go to C3B, that they would still provide some off-street parking, knowing that there is a existing issue today. We wouldn't want to increase that issue.
Bert, how old is that site plan?
Just maybe since June. It's within the past 3 or 4 months.
Oh, okay.
And I don't believe the site plan was ever approved. This was just the initial submittal that they had submitted to the Permit and Development Center. And I know on June 7th or July 7th, the Permit and Development Center issued a comment letter on this site plan with a list of requirements that they still have to meet. And they haven't made any resubmittals since then. So it's still in limbo with the Permit and Development Center. But this is the first iteration of that site plan that showed the potential for up to 18 spaces.
Okay. Mel?
All right, Bert, I need a lesson in urban planning. If you take the entire South Market District and make it C3B where nobody has to have off-street parking, where's everyone going to park?
I guess
that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I can
On the
understand.
junkyard site.
Yeah. I mean, someone's going to have some parking.
Other areas in the city where there is C3B, there are public parking ramps in close proximity. Like in East Village, there's the ramp by the
So someone figures out they can make money off offering parking, and so lots are developed just for parking.
Yeah. And the idea, too, is that eventually this will be a mixed-use area where people will be walking, biking.
Right.
And they won't be as auto-dominant as it is today.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll take that only under consideration somewhat here.
Any last questions from staff? Hearing none. Thanks, Bert. We'll close the public portion, go to board decision.
This is one of those things where I think we ought to support the developer. We ought to grant him the exception and let him move the addition to the north.
Okay.
And I think we ought to say, make him do some parking, but not require it all. I mean, it is expensive to put in this stuff and then never use it, you know.
I really don't think that would be the case, Tom. If I came to his restaurant, I would park there. I'd go to his existing restaurant, but I don't because I can't park anywhere. And I work in that district every day. I don't live or work that close that I can walk there and get back in 1 hour.
You know, there's a huge parking lot at Southeast 5th and Court that is owned by the people that own that whole development where the city has got city legal over there and stuff.
Yes.
And that parking lot's closed. And there are probably 75 parking slots there.
Someone's missing out on income.
Nobody is allowed to park it.
Nothing's for free.
Tell you what we'll do, because I think there's still going to be some push and shove on the variance portion. Why don't we vote on the exception portion, because I think there's a little bit of consensus on that. So can I have somebody make a motion to accept or to provide the exception of 18.65 feet less than the minimum 25 feet?
Yeah, so moved.
There a second?
And allow them to move the addition to the building to comply.
North then,
North.
how they want.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
To the north.
Because this is not an approved site plan, it's
Right.
just conceptual.
Right, right. We'll have to keep. Do we hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to grant the exception only so far. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. All right, let's talk about the variance. Tom, you're of the persuasion that 7. Get it halfway there.
Well, right, and you can see that, you know, if I was doing it, I'd put the 7 right there where, 11 through 17 are. And that'd leave them the whole green space area looking to the south, along Martin Luther King. And it would also provide them an easy transition to the other restaurant, would they acquire the city property.
Yeah. And Mel, you're of the persuasion that they need all 14.
Well, 14 isn't very much to ask to begin with, to meet the parking requirements. And if they have the kind of restaurant they're talking, they'll use all those spaces, I guarantee you. And if we think we're saving them some money, by the time you do surveying, you do initial grading, you do initial paving, to come back out again in 2 or 3 years when,
But that's
you
a
want to
business
expand.
decision. That's a business decision
Well,
they can make in
I'm
the
sure it
future.
is. I'm sure it is.
And
But
if they have a set aside for parking, they can build anytime they want.
Sure, but I don't agree with that argument. Costs are only going to get larger in the future. There's an economy of scale if you're going to do some certain things. Put your money into it, do it right the first time.
I would hope they would too. But I'm hearing they're willing to compromise. And we're caught in this flux right now of, can they get that additional city property? I think they can probably get it, just from all the conversations.
But we can't guess on that.
No, we can't.
That's not on the table for us.
No, but if I can grab 7 parking spots to start to alleviate the situation, and they can get that, and we can get them up to 14, I think it's a total win situation for the city and for the business. I'd hate to see it get hung.
Can we put some time constraints on, can we say they need to do the first 7 and within, I heard 18 months thrown out there, within 18 months, 24 months or whatever, they would be required to do the rest of them? Is that an option for us? That way maybe that gives the city and them time to discuss the sale of the property or the lease or whatever the city decides to do. Because I didn't hear a clear-cut conclusion as to whether or not the city's definitely going to sell it to them or willing to lease it to them. I think that still is.
Doesn't the city have to take bids on property? And I would assume they'd be probably few of none interested.
Let's see, Franklin
take bids
Field,
or
how
not?
many bids did you get on that? Just,
No, actually, the city doesn't have to take bids on
Okay.
it. They can sell it for an appraised price to the adjoining property owners.
Okay, because the adjoining property owner has a kind of first right per se.
Yeah, do they have a first right, the adjoining property owner? Or?
Okay, all right, glad to hear that.
There's a number of
Okay.
steps based on federal.
But it would allow them the first shot.
There's a public interest exception, which is what they did on Franklin.
Okay.
That it was in the public interest that these housing for the elderly be built on cemetery land.
Okay.
They don't need that property to make this comply. So
no,
We
no,
know that.
But this is something to go and formulate on the decision. So I like what Cindy had to say too. Can we put something together like 7 spaces within 12 months and then contingent on getting city property, give them 2 years to get up to 14?
But they don't need the city property to get up to 14.
They don't need it.
I understand.
They don't need the city property. I think that if we're going to require them to build 14, we ought to give them a timeline, and if they have some kind of irreversible financial reversal, they can come back and ask.
There
for
we go.
extension,
I
you
forgot
know?
about that. That's another good point. That's something you could live with, Mel?
I'm not sure.
I will bet we'll find out.
Move to
Here's what it
require.
says. You got to have a practical difficulty in meeting the requirements due to the land in question. We have plenty of room here
This
to
is an
meet everything.
exception, though. We're granting an exception.
Is
Yeah,
this
no, it's an
yeah,
exception.
I-
just granting the exception?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
Well,
moving-
because you're going from 14 required to 7, so it's
Very-
half.
okay.
Yeah. We're getting just underneath the,
But I thought we are going to require the 14.
We are,
We're just not going to do it all right now.
It's a phased approach.
You have to give the release.
Some now, some later, are all within a certain time.
The exception will be necessary if you're not requiring all the requirement at the front.
Yeah.
So
At the front,
it would be an exception with a condition that.
And the exception
you-
has the lesser bar to get over, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way I would like it to be is, I want 7 parking lots as soon as that building's ready to go.
Yes,
As soon
I
as
agree.
they occupy it, I want to see parking. And then, okay, I could give them a little more time to get in the rest, but
Give them 24
I think we
months to
need,
do the other
between the
7.
2 buildings, I think we need some parking.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
I just do. I'm not.
Well, when it costs them a lot of money not to have parking,
Okay.
start doing it.
Just thinking, we're getting into the winter months.
Well, yeah,
And I'm not sure when they're looking to build out. They
Yeah.
still have to do a site plan and some other stuff anyway.
so let's require
You can
7
pour concrete
immediately
in the
and,
winter.
Well, yeah.
7 immediately and 7 within 24 months.
To get their, at the time of occupancy, they have to have 7.
Yep.
And then X amount of months after that. And I don't care what the winter is from then.
I think 12 months is plenty of time.
18. I'm actually putting something on the table here.
It's a good compromise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you been following all this? Is it something that you think you can live with?
I think so, because as the gentleman stated, if I had $1 million in my back pocket, I could donate it to the land in between and build a beautiful parking lot, there's plenty of landscape, and that is our ultimate goal.
Okay.
And we'll see it.
Well, it's our goal to get something passed through here. We want to make sure you can live with it, and we, as part of the city, can make it work for the city. So I think we're almost there. So 7 immediately, and we're going to go 18 for 14?
18.
Okay. Somebody
Sounds
put
like
the
a
motion
football
out.
play.
14.
Heard those numbers tossed around. Mel, why don't you go ahead?
I think Tom had it more eloquent than
I'm good.
I did on his approach.
put the motion-
Did we already do the exception?
Yeah, the exception's good.
Okay.
Yeah. And the applicant will be required to build 7 parking spaces immediately
With,
to
I
be,
thought, with the building
to
that,
be occupied, or to be in shape to occupy upon the opening of the building for business.
certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, it's a certificate of
Shall be completed before certificate of occupancy is issued,
Yeah.
right?
And
Okay.
an additional, will be given an additional 7, or additional 18 months to build an additional 7 parking slots.
Okay.
And does this stay with this land if these people, because we have an owner and then we have a contract buyer?
Yes, it'll be with the land.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, the 18 months is from occupancy.
Yes.
Right.
No
Not from
seasons.
today.
Yeah, yeah. And no seasonal, just 18 months from whenever you open your doors.
Today.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
They may have 6 months before they get occupancy.
right.
Understand.
Yep. That's it.
I'll second that motion.
All right, been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Motion carries 5-0. Glad you guys could hang with us. We wanted to make sure that everybody gets taken care of.
I'll move to approve the
Okay.
minutes from
Thank you.
last month's meeting.
I'm going to come down next week just to
There
get.
you go. Got a motion to accept meetings from last month. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. I don't think,
Nothing. I pass. I wasn't here.
Tom wasn't here.
that's all right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much. Way to stick this one out.